Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for another tremendous turnout and helping us raise over $60,000 this year for two great charities. Thank you. One of our tremendous sponsors is White Feather Investments. It is a company whose sole mission is to help retired veterans they teach them how to achieve financial freedom through real estate investment. And I'd like to bring up their CEO, Buddy Rushing, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Face the flag, put your hand on your heart, and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated.
All right, we have a packed schedule. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it.
Across the globe, the vast majority of children with cancer will die.
No child should die in the dawn of life, and that means no child anywhere.
At St. Jude, we don't care who cures cancer, we just need to advance the cure.
El foco y el objetivo de St. Jude es conseguir avanzar en el cuidado de los niños con cáncer en todo el mundo.
The thing we are called to do is to make sure these kids are surrounded by people who know how to provide the very best care possible.
Patients from all over the world can look to St. Jude to do cutting-edge research as well as to identify new and better treatments.
We're constantly developing new therapies for rare pediatric cancer, and we share our information globally, and that's the hallmark of St. Jude.
Here to say a couple words about St. Jude is Erin Eslinger.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Bruce Norris and the Norris Group. I'm so honored to be here tonight on behalf of St. Jude. So today, one of the most significant indicators of whether a child will survive cancer is where that child lives. Nearly 90% of children with cancer live in low and middle income countries. Many of these kids lack access to accurate diagnoses. It's estimated that 400,000 kids annually worldwide will get cancer, but only half of them will be diagnosed. And of those who are diagnosed in these low-income countries, many of these kids lack access to consistent care, treatment, and medicine. So what that means is that these kids, 80% of them, will die from their disease. That's a staggering statistic, 80%, and it's just not acceptable. CEO Dr. Downing of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, he didn't think that was acceptable either. Something had to be done. And he asked a very simple question. If not St. Jude, then who? So in 2018, St. Jude Global was launched. And the mission of St. Jude Global is to engage over 250 institutions over 70 countries worldwide. Yes, exactly. And the goal is to increase access to quality care and increase survival rates for childhood cancer and other catastrophic diseases worldwide. The Global Initiative for Childhood Cancer has the goal of increasing survival rates in 6 common childhood cancers to 60% by the year 2030, which is a really ambitious goal. But St. Jude, we're no stranger to ambitious goals. Our founder, he had an ambitious goal. And when Danny Thomas set out to build St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, he was told that it was impossible, that it couldn't be done. In fact, he was told that it would break his heart. But he didn't give up. He didn't listen. In 1962, when the hospital opened its doors, a diagnosis for childhood cancer was considered largely incurable, practically a death sentence. But since then, St. Jude has helped push the overall cancer survival rate from 20% to over 80%, and up to 94% for certain types of cancer. Yes. Thank you. But like I said, that's here in the United States. So our work isn't done. And we won't stop. We won't stop until no child dies from cancer, no matter where they live. If not St. Jude, then who? So it's thanks to fundraisers like these and supporters like you that St. Jude can continue our good work and our life-saving mission, finding cures, saving children everywhere. So thank you. Thank you to the Norris Group for your many years of support for this incredible event and for all the money that you've raised for the kids of St. Jude and their families.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your wish was granted?
Happy Wish Day, buddy! Do you like Mickey Mouse? Yeah?
It makes you forget about the bad times. Make-A-Wish Foundation helped give her the hope that we couldn't.
Make-A-Wish has been a really cool part of our journey.
Thank you for everything you do for all these kids.
Should definitely help other kids have their wish come true. It really makes an impact.
Best day of my life. I'll always have those moments to remind myself of all the amazing things that life has to offer.
What Make-A-Wish does, to me, I think it's out of this world.
I love it! Thank you, Make-A-Wish!
Please welcome Make-A-Wish OC&IE CEO, my friend Gloria Crockett.
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you, Bruce. Wow. Wishes provide what? They provide hope. And I want you guys to know that each and every one of you are providing hope by being here this evening. And I would like to give you guys all a round of applause. So thank you. Were those not some amazing wishes? Did you guys see those? Those are amazing. So what people often don't know, that those kids that receive wishes are between the ages of 2.5 and 18 years of age. 73%, let me say this, 73% of our kids grow up and have wonderful, happy adult lives. So guess what we're doing? We're being there to lift them up, to provide them hope, to provide them inspiration when their families and them need it most. Just last Saturday, we had our gala, and we granted our 8,000th wish for Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. It takes a community to come together to say, what can we do to help others, to help give back, to help provide that hope? And what we do every single day is providing that. Wish Kids parents say to us, over 92% of them say their child having a wish helped their family grow stronger and grow closer together. Also, physicians, 94% of them say that a wish helps kids become more compliant with their treatment. So wishes are important. They're just not a need to have, they're a have to have, right? So we're here today to say thank you all so very much to the Norris Group, to I Survived Real Estate, and I've got a couple of really interesting things. So we wear this gold star because that gold star provides hope. I know, Joey, you've got yours on. Bruce, I've got yours here, so I'm gonna pass this over to Joey and give that to you. But I started with Make-A-Wish as the CEO 4 years ago, just before the pandemic took place. And so there was a wish that was adopted by the Norris Group at the I Survived Real Estate event, and that was Elijah's wish. His wish was to meet Jeff Bezos. And I just want you guys to know that Elijah has written a book, and it's amazing. It's an inspiring story of a 17-year-old with a very tough disease and his mission to cure it. So when he wrote this book, I asked him to sign one for Bruce and one for Joey. It says, Bruce, thank you for supporting Make-A-Wish, and I hope you enjoy my book. I would love to meet you again. So I've got these two for you guys.
Thank you.
When my mission delivery director brought that book, one of the books in, I said, oh my gosh, you have to get them signed. So one of the things that we do each year as well at I Survived Real Estate is we adopt a wish. So what is it when you adopt a wish? You help pay it forward. You actually grant that wish for that child, and then you help that next one be granted. So this is I'm a Wish Kid. This is Abigail. She's 5 with leukemia, and she wanted to go to Disney World. So I want to say, on behalf of Make-A-Wish, we want to say thank you for helping grant Annabelle's wish.
Thank you.
Again, each and every one of you are helping make wishes come true. I want to say thank you for providing hope and inspiration, and have a lovely evening and learn a lot. I learn a lot at this event every single year. So thank you, Joey. Thank you, Bruce. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
In 2013, about 5 years into the I Survived Real Estate event, Bruce Norris decided that it should have an award. This award should be a Lifetime Achievement and Mentorship Award, which honors individuals that elevated real estate investing as a profession with their outstanding leadership and willingness to share their knowledge and work with others. With the blessing of the Jim Rohn family estate, the award was named the Roney Award. The 2023 Roney Award recipient is Aaron Norris. Thank you. It falls on me to tell you all the reasons why Aaron is a great candidate for this prestigious award. So let me tell you about Aaron, the friend, the philanthropist, the investor, and the teacher. First, the friend. To a man and woman, the resonating thought about Aaron was that he made you feel so important that you would characterize him as a friend who cared more about your success than his own, a friend that could root for you like he had money riding on it, a friend who would roll up his sleeves and get dirty or fight right alongside with you, a friend that you couldn't wait to see again and spend more time with. Aaron, the philanthropist. Aaron was the greatest philanthropist I ever knew. Others may have been more prolific in terms of giving money, but nobody gave more to more worthy causes than Aaron did, whether it was his time, his treasure, or his talent. And if you were lucky, you got all three. Best of all, he would rally many to join him. His magnetic personality would draw you in, and the next thing you know, you were volunteering for something or writing a check. He was a key figure in the Give Big Riverside campaign, which raised over $1 million for local nonprofits in one day. Aaron the investor. Now, growing up the child of Bruce Norris didn't actually mean that he would gravitate to real estate investing. You know, he pulled up his fair share of, roach-infested carpets and, took his fair share of wheelbarrows to the dumpster, but his heart was always in the arts. He would leave home for the bright lights of New York to fulfill his childhood dream on Broadway. In a twist of fate, he was injured, trying to tumble into play. As he contemplated getting older and how long he could do this, he was called home as his mom battled cancer. He never regretted coming home, always thinking of others more than himself. After, landing in a couple jobs, his dad finally said, "Hey, why don't you come work for me?" Aaron said, "Okay." And he immediately began making a difference. The reports that Bruce had come to be famous for suddenly were different. Aaron had taken over the design and quality of these reports, and it showed. Many would come to say that Aaron brought the Norris Group into the 21st century, and along with it, the real estate investing community. Aaron finally bought his first investment home, and he always gave credit to a fellow Roney Award winner, John Schaub, and his book, Building Wealth with One House at a Time. For the next decade, Aaron would work tirelessly to carve a niche of his own. He never wanted to be handed anything for free or just be called Bruce's kids, although I know a lot of you guys would like that. No, Aaron would dive into real estate technology and marketing, and as quickly as he learned it, he would be on the Investor Circuit Club teaching others how to do the same, which brings me to Aaron the teacher. Aaron's previous career made him a natural in front of the crowd, whether he was talking to a group of 15 real estate agents at a small broker house, or he was presenting in front of 500 people talking about the latest real estate tech. Aaron always brought it. You would never leave like you didn't learn at least one thing that you could immediately implement into your career and to your strategy. Matter of fact, you probably needed a couple days from information overload. And if you didn't get it, Aaron was always a phone call away. I would sit in on a lot of these investor roadmaps that we did, and he loved nothing more than to see the light go off, the light bulb go off in somebody's head when they got it. That was him, wanting their success more than his own. His ideas, he would hit them with what he called, "I'm going to beat you up with ideas tailored to your personality and your skill set." As he continued to learn and grow, his ideas would go on to the national stage, writing for Bigger Pockets and Forbes magazine. And if there was a policy change or law that threatened mom and pop investors, Aaron would learn everything he could possibly know so to help you understand what was coming down the pipe from Sacramento. As much as he thought he was an even bigger advocate for the whole real estate community. Let me leave you with the last thought is Aaron's impact. Aaron, through his work with his dad, impacted so many in the investment world. He made the concepts and charts that Bruce would present truly speak to you so clearly that you could make the best decision for you and your family. He also made a big impact on his own. I think you could probably argue who's more famous, Bruce or Aaron. I will leave you with this, the impact that Aaron had on my life, if I can get through it. I spent the better parts of 9 years volunteering for the same nonprofits that Aaron was helping out, working to make Riverside a better place for everybody who lived and worked there, helping young professionals to connect socially, develop professionally, and engage civically. But my life would change 6 years ago when he called and said, "Hey, me and Dad want to make you an offer." What I didn't know is that the trajectory of my life and my family's life would be changed forever. I stand here before you as a testament of what Aaron's belief has done. Aaron and I would go to Starbucks every day. I think it was on these short car rides that Aaron truly opened up to me about everything and where our bond was solidified. There wasn't anything that we didn't know about each other. It was there that I learned how insecure he was about not bringing value. He hated being thought of being light. The thought of others thinking that he didn't deliver would sometimes keep him up at night. I would tell him that he had nothing to worry about, and he would eventually say, "You're right, they ain't ready." My family understands this impact too. My little girl Chloe's here tonight. She called Aaron her business partner. Because during COVID, she would tag along with Aaron and I to Starbucks, and she would have business meetings with him at 12 years old. My son, who graduated high school last year, he was taking senior pictures, and I told him, "Hey, if you don't want to, you don't have to wear the purple bracelet that we had made when Aaron passed away." He said, "Dad, I want to wear it. I know how much he meant to you, and I know how much he did for our family." What I said to him next is what I'll say to all of you. My wish and hope is in your lifetime that you have just one friend like Aaron. Thank you.
Aaron was a beacon of light for our entire industry, and they just don't make them like that anymore. He always made you feel like a priority, no matter how busy he was.
Wanting to wish Aaron Norris congratulations on the Roni Award. Who deserves it more than Aaron? Who could possibly deserve it more?
Aaron was one of the best people in the real estate community. He was an amazing human being. He was kind, welcoming, authentic, and humorous. He was also a geek. Aaron was also amazing at using marketing data to highlight upcoming trends in real estate.
When I met Aaron, he and Bruce were going through an ordeal with a different builder at the time. And although he was stressed about the situation, I got to see the character of a man that was second to none. I watched him push for, at that time, his clients, you all, to make sure that the investors that worked with the Norris Group had access to the best product and the best process possible.
I sold Aaron his first rental property, a hoarder house, super smelly, and squatters next door. I was worried he was going to fire me as a friend over that deal. It turned out fantastic. I was relieved. I valued our friendship.
Every single time that I spoke with him, I came away feeling completely empowered, completely heard, full of information that could make my life better. Every time he spoke to our group, everyone was just buzzing afterwards.
If he wasn't running around at some Norris Group event trying to make sure that we all had a perfect evening, or that we had all the information we needed, or that we had basically some new piece of information that we didn't know about before, he was out in some political endeavor, some nonprofit organization, always doing something bigger than himself.
He was just my bestie. We used to have lunch. We had connected years ago, and I was blessed to be able to spend lots of lunches and dinners with him, just laughing and solving all the world's problems. And then one day, he voluntold / convinced me to be on a panel. And he just said, "Just trust me, you got this." I was like, I don't even know. So I go to this conference. I'm sitting in the back trying to hide. And I'm sitting by someone, I've never seen him before, and everyone keeps coming up to him. And then Aaron opens the conference, and his poise, articulation, and everyone just in awe of hanging on every word that he had to say. And I was like, wow. And then at break, everyone kept coming up to this guy that I was sitting next to, and Aaron comes, I was like, who is this guy? And he was like, that's my dad. That's Bruce Norris. But that moment, I realized what a special human Aaron was. Not just because of his influence and his knowledge, but because of his heart for others. And Bruce the same.
And one of my favorite things to watch was the dynamic between Bruce and Aaron both on stage together. Aaron trailblazing the new laws that affect real estate investors and the technology, and Bruce, of course, with the data and analytics. It really was cool to see.
When I think about Aaron, I think about the word service. Always willing to serve, always thinking about other people. I think one of the first events we ever did together was a breakfast brunch, and we didn't know at the time, but for an 8 o'clock breakfast, the Bruce Norris fans would show up by 7 a.m. before the restaurants open, and Aaron, of course, rolled up his sleeves and was going around pouring coffee, setting the table, serving people, and that's just one of many examples of Aaron Norris being himself and always thinking about others.
You know, most of us get started in real estate for our own interests, but Aaron Norris, from the beginning, was about bigger things.
What this award does not address is the extraordinary man you were, a spiritual being beyond reproach, and most important, my friend.
I believe it was Maya Angelou who said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget the way you made them feel."
So these silly masks, there was about 100 of these with people holding them in front of their face at a commerce event that Aaron held, or he was part of in downtown Riverside. People marching all over the place with these restaurants and businesses. And it was just such a great symbol of how much he was loved and what an influence he was. And this was something that had nothing to do with real estate. This was a business commerce event. Dude was amazing. He listened nonstop, and he cared about our success. He cared about the people around him's success so much.
You know, we talk about what Aaron meant to real estate, but real estate's really a business about people. So I would say his biggest impact was just on how he shared his humanity, how he touched people's lives, how he made us as investors want to look at real estate really as a people business. And that's just an amazing legacy.
I'll never forget that moment. While I was so focused on solving the problem, Aaron, in only a way that Aaron could, reminded me that life itself and our family and friends are worth more than any amount of money or any investment could ever be worth.
The very first time that I met Aaron was very special. Before that, the Norris Group was all about a handshake, pat on the back, well done. When I met Aaron, and we never met each other before that, he came up to me with open arms and gave me a big hug. He called me Uncle Tony. I'll never forget that.
What some of you may not know is Aaron's first love, acting. Aaron successfully made it all the way to New York and off-Broadway plays.
I also want to thank you for inspiring us with your heartfelt and selfless actions, such as leaving your Broadway career to come support your mom, deciding to help out your dad, which took the Norris Group into a new plateau, which has enabled and positively influenced so many people, and also for creating this world-class, amazing I Survived event. Not only has it made such amazing charitable contributions, but has made all of us in the real estate investment community proud.
Thank you, Aaron, for being an awesome person and amazing friend, and congratulations on your award.
Definitely no one more deserving than Aaron for the Roni Award.
Congratulations, Aaron.
Aaron, I want to thank you so much for all of your contributions to our real estate investment community. We've learned so much since you came into our lives.
This Roni Award is truly deserved, and nobody else could be stronger in earning it.
Your legacy lives on for all the help and service that you've given to others and to the real estate community of Southern California as a whole.
Congratulations, Aaron, on receiving the Roni Award. You truly deserve it.
Congratulations on the Roni Award, Aaron. Well done.
Congratulations on the Roni Award, Aaron. Very well deserved, buddy.
Congratulations once again, Aaron.
I miss you, friend. Congratulations.
So with that said, Aaron, congrats, my friend, on winning the Roni Award.
Congratulations on winning this award tonight.
Congratulations, Aaron. You certainly deserve this award. And big hug from your Uncle Tony.
Aaron may be gone from us physically, but for those of us that knew him, he will absolutely forever live on in our hearts.
To accept the Roni Award is that guy, Aaron's dad.
Thank you. I'll just say we're retiring the Roney Award, so this will be the last one that we give. The Roney Award was started because of my respect for Jim Rohn. 1981, or 1980 in October, I attended a seminar. My first note on the top of the page was, "This man doesn't need our money." I could tell his motive was pure, and later on he told a story that changed his life. A Girl Scout came to his door, was a really good salesperson, box of cookies for $3. He didn't have $3, so what did he do? He lied. He said, "I already bought 10 boxes of them from another Girl Scout," and when she left, he slumped on the floor and cried. And that event changed his life. And when he taught, I could tell he was trying to reach inside of each person and say, "You have one of those stories. You can be something much better than you are." And that's why we created the Roney Award in honor of Jim Rohn. I want to end it with Aaron Norris. One of the things that was delightful as his father is I love to go wherever he had been. When you're raising a kid, your kid's always following where you went, but when he gets older, you get to follow where they go. And one of my joys in life was to go where Aaron had been, and they go, "Oh, you're Aaron Norris's dad? Oh, we love him." There's not a better feeling than that. When Aaron had cancer, he was on his second treatment at UCLA. So I dropped him off in front of the hospital, went to park the car, came up, and I passed by the nursing station, and it was literally a buzz, and so I paid attention. And you know what they said? "Aaron Norris is back." Who gets that at the hospital? And every time he went, like if they changed locations, the nurses at the other location, they're coming over going, "This is not where he goes." He was just loved. What a lucky dad I have been to follow Aaron and see his reaction, or people's reaction to him. So thank you, Joey. I love Joey's emotion when it comes to Aaron. They're great friends. The best friends in life. That's so cool to see. So thank you for honoring Aaron tonight. I appreciate that. Just for fun, a couple of months ago, we counted up the transactions that I've done in a career. It was 6,500 houses that we've touched, either bought and sold or somebody that I taught the business to that we funded. I bring that up because tonight I'm going to share with you a transaction that was the most meaningful transaction in my whole career. Somebody that we taught called me up and said, "Would you like to buy a property in Riverside from me? I've paid $90,000 for it. I'd like to get $100,000. I said, "Let's take a look at it." So I went to look at it, and it was really termited. It's probably the third worst termited house I'd ever seen. I said, "Let's get my Snyder's termite guy out there. Let's do a termite report, and then we'll make a decision." So we got that done. All right, wasn't as bad as I thought, $7,000, and I said, "Let's make a deal." So I bought it for $100,000. Was really busy at the time, didn't get to that house. Finally, we had a contractor do a complete repair estimate, and I just said, "You know what, I think I'll sell it as is." So when we listed it, we put the termite inspection attached to the listing and the repair estimate, sold the property, thought I'd never hear about it again. A year later, I heard about it. I got a call, and the agent said, the property buyer at the property on Sierra is really upset because he was told that there was a service person that killed themselves in the house. And she said, "Did you know that?" And I said, "No, I didn't know that." And so I called up the guy that sold me the house. I said, "Did you know that there was a death on the property?" And he said, "Yes. And I told you that in writing in the contract." And worst business day of my life. I went and found that contract. I looked it up. Unbelievable. I literally started my car within 10 seconds. I walked out of the building and I drove to the house. I'm going there for really one reason. I want a fellow human being to know that a mistake was made, but it wasn't intentional. I didn't want him to linger with that feeling that somebody had intentionally screwed him. That was just unthinkable. Fortunately, he was there, and I walked up to him. I said, "Are you Gustavo?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "I'm Bruce Norris." He said, "Your name sounds familiar." And I said, "I'm the guy that bought the house, that sold it, listed it and sold it to you. And I just found out that there was a violent death on the property. But I also found out that I was told that in writing. So I understand you're upset, but I want you to understand that was not intentional. So if you're going to sue anybody, you sue me. You don't sue the listing agent or the sales agent or the other owner. They couldn't have known because I was the only one that was supposed to know." He looked at me and says, "I cannot believe you just said that. Let's go in and talk." And it turned out he was in the service and he had seen that happen to other people and he had contemplated that himself. And so it was really emotional for him. And I'm holding him. I just like, "Man, let me just buy the house from you. I'll just pay off your VA, get the heck out of here and start again, man." He said, "You would do that?" I said, "Of course I would do that." And so, it was emotional for a little while. And he said, "Give me a couple minutes." So he was gone for 5 minutes. Longest 5 minutes of my business life. I had no idea what was happening. And Gustavo came back with 2 service medals and told me the story of each. And you know what he does? He says, "I'm going to give you one of these because what you did tonight was the gutsiest thing I've ever seen." Wow. That was the most unbelievable story. And he said, "You know," and he said, "I want to keep the house." He said, I just wanted somebody to care. That's all he did." The next morning, I got an email from him. And it said, "I used to wake up and my day was all, dark. And today I wake up and I have hope again." And his sister sends me an email and says, "I heard about, Gustavo told me your story yesterday." And she says, "I can tell you, in my opinion, you just saved his life." Now tonight, Judy, his daughter, is here. And Gustavo has COVID. But I gave Judy the medal back. And tonight I wanted her to have it back. And I didn't know I was going to get another medal, but her husband, Maxwell Nelson, where's the medal? Good grief. Have you ever had one too many pockets? That's what's going on right now. I didn't lose it yet, I promise. I want Maxwell, Gustavo's son-in-law, to come up for just a couple minutes and talk to you about this subject of service people and what they go through. And he's got a couple of charities that I've donated to. He's going to mention those, but I just want him to know that we care.
Wow. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you can't guess by now, I'm not a public speaker in the slightest. However, thank you. As Bruce said, Gustavo, I know Miss Tony, is my wife's father. I've only known him for a few years. We have our disagreements, as most people do with their father-in-law. But we share one thing in common, and it's that we care about our service members. Again, my name is Maxwell Nelson. I'm an Army veteran of 6 years. I know I don't look it. I served 3 years with the 1st Armored Division and 3 years with the 82nd Airborne Division as a cavalry scout, as well as a paratrooper. They go hand in hand. I was medically retired as a staff sergeant from the 82nd Airborne on April 24th of this year. Again, just over 6 years. I was retired due to worsening injuries. I'm so sorry.
No.
Worsening injuries related to a deployment in support of NATO last year when Russia invaded Ukraine, as well as subsequent anxiety and depression that followed. Married to, you already know her, in the green dress over there, my beautiful wife, Judy, who I love more than anything. Together we have 2 dogs and 3 cats. Pretty great. I love fast cars, I love nice watches, I love writing, I love music, I like cold beer. Now you know a little bit about me. After getting back to civilian life, I found a passion, a calling, if you will. Many of you may be aware of the fact that upwards of 22 veterans kill themselves every day. 22. And recent studies show that it could be more. This has hit extremely close to home for me. I've lost numerous brothers and sisters this year alone, but there are 2 that hit me harder. They hit so close to home. Sorry. One was my buddy, Sergeant Chandler Doc Adams. Great guy. Just type of person that you'd walk around the squadron footprint and he'd ask you how you're doing. Just, believe it or not, I was the scary NCO. I was the guy that yelled at people, and he still came up to me to ask me how I was doing. Second one was a soldier that I took in when I was on my way out the door, they say. I was getting out of the Army. His name was Corporal Logan, also Doc Wildman. Great kid. He was supposed to teach me how to play chess. Never got around to it. And every day for the rest of my life, I will wear this black bracelet with his information on it. And on the inside it says, I'm going to teach you how to play chess, Arn. Many people don't realize, but since 9/11, military suicide rates are 4 times higher than deaths that occurred during military combat operations. Everybody thinks about the war, but they don't think about the war here. In 2021, the USO reported that 7,057 service members were killed in combat. It's a lot. That also is compared to the 30,177 active duty and veterans who have taken their own lives in the same 20-year period. Active duty members and their families already sacrificed so much. They sacrifice so much for our freedom and our country. They go through so much, just on a day-to-day basis. This staggering statistic underscores the urgent need for action and intervention. I've made it my mission to raise awareness of this issue, and have gone as far as switching my college major from business to political science in the hopes that maybe someday in the future I can change something, because I'm sick of seeing my brothers and sisters die. I'm currently reaching out to many. I've already submitted a formal inquiry to the Armed Forces Oversight Committee in Washington, D.C. through my congressman, and we received a response from my old brigade commander. Not going the way that we want, but I'm trying to put an end to this and get my brothers and my sisters, my fellow service members, the help that they so desperately need. Too many are suffering from this, and we don't talk about it enough. I've made it my mission. I would implore you to find out more about this issue on your own and find a way to help, because there are ways to help. It is only by raising awareness that we can begin to remove the stigma of seeking help with mental health, something that I personally went through. Something that people so desperately need. Two organizations I'm supporting are Racing for Heroes and Through Light Comes Tragedy. Or, sorry, I messed that up. Through tragedy comes light. It would be really weird if it was the other way around. I know that Joey and Bruce will let you know how you can learn more or help if you're so inclined to do so. God bless you all. God bless our service members. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sorry, I messed up.
No, you didn't mess up. You kidding me? Come on. That's not messing up.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, work for all my life, and I had to start again, just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the Nixon, Minnesota, to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there
now in the tradition of the I Survive Real Estate, Bruce Norris and his market update.
We have, oh, it's up there? Now we're going to talk about boring real estate charts. All right. You know, about 15 years into a real estate career, I had an interesting day. I bought that car for Aaron. He graduated high school, paid $15,700 for it. Same day, bought a 3-bedroom house in Riverside for $13,300. And I thought, okay, I've been doing this 15 years. I have no idea why that happened. And I'd been through a few cycles, got burned by one, so I thought, you know, I got to figure out, maybe somebody else has figured it out. Let's go there first. So I went to the library and I got microfilm and I read every article for 25 years that was written about real estate timing. From 1970 to 1995, I read every written article. No one had predicted anything accurate, especially for a long term. So I said, I don't know if it's possible, but I'm going to see if I can figure it out. So for the next 18 months, all I did was go into libraries and any place that I could find data that I didn't have, and I would write down by the hand each line. Like if I found affordability, I would write it all down, which is interesting, by the way, because I've heard some really good experts, you know, give their opinion on things, and they say something interesting. Well, they get the awards for like an annual thing, and said, well, I really don't. I don't deserve that, but the only credit because I have staff that does that. And I thought, wow, you know what would be missing for me is that I have to do it myself. And the reason I have to do it myself is because as I write down this one pile of data, it rhymes with every other chart I did that with. So I know that it interacts with other things. It doesn't stand alone. No one could hand you a chart and have that happen. So the other thing is when I do these reports, you know, I'm trying to figure out where to put Bruce Norris's dough. There's not a purer motive than that, you know, and so that's what started to happen. In '97, we wrote a report called California Comeback, and we wrote that right at the tail end of a downturn. People were so glad that somebody wrote something positive. Did they believe a word of it? No. But they were happy you showed up because it was the first time in 6 years real estate had a smile on its face. So people liked it, and then that happened. And then it kept happening. So it went, not only did it double, it tripled. So I guess you could say I got it wrong. Went the right direction anyway, but it kept on going, and I thought, well, wait a minute. There was a barrier there that I thought that was going to stop, and it didn't stop. So I started thinking about maybe we've overdone it. Didn't know how you could do that, but in front of an audience of about this size, I interviewed a lender in 2006. And I said, stated income loans, where does the stated income number come from? She said, oh, we just make it up. And I was really silent for like 20 seconds. I thought it was a half-hour interview. It was a one-question interview. That's all I needed to know. Because I just realized, okay, you just said you commit loan fraud on every loan, and you don't care if you say that in public. Now I understand why this is getting crazy and how bad it's going to be. And so I looked at that chart and said, okay, we'll write this one, California crash. Now, here's the difference. When you write a crash report before it happens and everybody's having the time of their life in real estate, you have a very unpopular year. Because I would speak in front of the agents and the lenders and the investors, and everybody's kicking butt and taking home big checks, and you're out of your mind. It's never going to end. And see, that's why I like charts. Charts do not allow me to make emotional decisions. It makes me look at a process that's repetitive. And so it crashed. And this was a significant crash. If you didn't miss it, it took you out. If you caught it and got out of the way, it made you a fortune. That's how important it was to get this one right. And so the price crashed and went down, and it stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. And I think it was about 2011, 2012. I looked at it and went, wow, we have just stayed here for a long time. I'm wondering, maybe California is no longer going to separate its price from the nation. We're just going to be normal, like, Ohio or something. And so I really did a study that was looking for the negative and trying to figure out if maybe this is over. And it came out that this was the title of the next report, All In or Fold. So I had gone through the fold thought process, and I realized the best thing to do was go all in. And so in 2012, we told our investors, go all in. We created an 8-year program that would take them to 2020 with their rentals, and created a lot of people that made a lot of millions of dollars. So it was a pretty cool thing. So always trying to figure out what's next, again, where to put Bruce Norris's money. So it's 2012, it goes on a straight line. And about 2019, there's signs that we're slowing, and in 2020, the coronavirus hits. And all of that brown line probably shouldn't have happened, but it did. So now we have to deal with that. So, like what's next? So I think this is 2022, we wrote this report called Uncharted Territory. It's really a tongue-in-cheek thing, uncharted. That's all we're dealing with charts. But the question is, are we about to have a price crash? And the math of it is, yeah, a really, really bad one. But is there something that might get in the way called charts that we've never seen before? And the answer is probably yes. So you guys can still be happy you came, I heard the air went out of the room when I said that other thing. So here we are, we're hovering around this very high number, 850. And the affordability number, this is the chart that I look at. One of the comps we have over the years, we created comps to tell us that a cycle is over. This is one of the charts that tells us a boom cycle is over. The affordability hitting 17%, 80, 89, 05. Then it went down to 12 in 07 or 06. That was fake. We had people lying on loans, and now we're down to that 17 or 16. It basically saying it's done. This upcycle is over. But we have some things in place that we've never had before, and we'll talk about that. Here's a percentage of median income. This is the other comp, if you will. What does it take out of your budget to buy the median price home with 20% down? And we're at 70%. Now, there's a history of that. Did we have it in the crazy times, 2006 and 7? Yes. And we had something similar in 1980 and 89, a very exaggerated. Here's a good question, though. Do you stay there? Is there any history of staying there, spending 70% of your budget on house? No. See, that's the scary part. So, maybe we're getting comfortable saying, well, yeah, we'll just stay there for now. Well, when does that happen last? That would be good to ask. Okay? So if it stays there, there's got to be something unusual for it to keep there. Because look at the history of it. You spend a lot of time under 40%. So if you want to know what the price damage is, just take a look at 70% and put it into 40. Is that a huge price hit? It is. That's what should happen mathematically. So in a little while, we'll talk about why that's probably not going to occur. Here's a history of mortgage rates. It's a really interesting thing. Again, when you study charts and your agenda is to find out the truth, you come up with some amazing things. Interest rates went from 1974 to 1980, interest rates doubled from 7.5 to 15. How would you like to have been in that stage? You know what happened to price? They tripled. Think about that. The median price in California went from 34 grand to 105, and interest rates went from 7.5 to 15. So when anybody says, well, of course, when interest rates, and I've debated a lot of PhDs that this sentence has come out of their mouth. Of course, when interest rates go up, prices go down. Really? You just had to look at 2 charts to come up with a better answer than that. And so, and then 2008 and 9, we have an interest rate that's a little less than that, right, about 6, and prices went down by 50%. So here's a good question for you. If you absolutely know the direction of interest rate, what can you absolutely tell me about the direction of price? Nothing. Isn't that fun? Well, that's good to know, because then you can go, okay, well, what else matters? Because it's more than that. So one of the things about interest rates is that we've had a sequence that happens after affordability, and it didn't matter what the interest rates were. It happened just the same. So whatever, where interest rates were 13 or 10 or 6 or 5, what happens after you hit this affordability number to other charts is damaging. So what happens first is you explode in unsold inventory. So inventory goes up. Now, if you're not in 1980 and 81, how's that for a chart of a lot of inventory? You know, we feel bad. Well, we got 2.5 months. Oh my gosh. They had 22 months of houses, 30 months of condos, 10% unemployment, 15% mortgage rates. Price hit? 0. See, it's fun when you study charts and go, okay, well, I have to contend with that because that was, in fact, what happened. So why didn't you have price damage? And that's what's neat about looking at this and say, okay, I could have all those bad charts. It must be missing a bad chart that means more than what's there. So that's maybe what tonight's a little bit about. So within 2 years of reaching this low point in affordability, this is what happened to inventory in the different cycles. 4 months to 22 months, 6 to 13, 2.5 to 9. You have a big price hit 2.5 to 9 and no price hit in 4 to 22. So maybe the makeup of the inventory is more important than the months. This is the sales. So you hit 17% affordability and the sales go down. What's going to be interesting, you know, at the end of 2023, the amount of commissions made compared to 2021 will be about 50%. So the realtors will, you could say the realtors are still fully employed, or you could say that they have 50% unemployment. That's actually a correct number. So this industry is not doing well. So sales went down. New construction goes down. After you hit that 17% affordability, it goes down. Take a look at the numbers at 2005 to 2007. How could you build a house when you could buy a 2-year-old house for 20 cents on the dollar? So you couldn't build. That's part of the cycle. Now, this cycle, this is California numbers. We decided not to build new houses in California. Apparently, we don't need them anymore. Usually at the peak, we have 150,000 houses built, and this time we peaked at about 60. And usually there's a ramp up, you know, you do 90 and 100 and 120. We never did any of that. So apparently we don't need new houses, or we'll talk about some of the policies that are in place that make it very difficult for a builder to do that. Unemployment, again, affordability hitting 17% tips all of these charts into a negative territory. There's the unemployment. So from 6.9 to 10, 5.1 to 9.5, 5.4 to 12.5, and this cycle, 3.6 to... So what's interesting about this cycle, it's not cooperating with history. So you have to go, okay, well, why is that? Trustee sales, how's that for a nice chart? Percentage-wise, it's dangerous everywhere. It's like 888% on the first cycle. It's 888%, I think, on the second cycle. And then it's thousands of percent in the third cycle. So, and this cycle, it's not up, it's down. So there's something weird about this cycle. So anyways, affordability recovers. And so this is what's interesting is as affordability goes back up, every other chart in real estate gets hammered. Of higher affordability does not help other charts. You're saying I have 5 minutes? Okay. All right. So this is the median price history after 17% affordability. So different reactions. In the 80s, it goes up. In the 90s, it goes down a little. In 2007, 8, 9, it crashes. And now we have to make a new decision. What's next for now? Well, there was the trustee sales going up in percentage. But here's what they were as a percentage of the transactions. And all of a sudden, it starts to mean something. So this is in 1980. We have all those other charts that are terrible. But the transactions, the number of trustee sales, if you look at the right, was 1 in 4. If you're an appraiser, you don't have to say that that's the dominant number. That's the value of everything. It's only 1 in 4 sales. Matter of fact, you can probably ignore that. If you go to the 90s, It's about 40%. And you started to have some price damage as we went to auctions and we bought those. Those became comps that started to hurt the retail market. But what happened in 2008, it was 7 in 10. It was the market. If you were flipping houses in that year, you could buy a house that was $365 3 years ago. Buy it for 65 grand, fix it, and have 25 offers in one day for 125, and the appraisal come back at 90. And why was that? Is because all of the inventory was REO selling for below 100, and the appraiser couldn't ignore it. That's when you have damage, is when you have a category of real estate that dictates the comp of every other property. So when you go forward, you have to go, okay, are we going to have a pile of trustee sales? Or maybe that's not the only question you have to ask. Have you ever seen another chart damage inventory? So Grand Junction, Colorado in 1984, prices there, I bought all of the fourplexes HUD took back in one buy. They were 200 grand, I bought them for 40, okay? What happened there? Oil shale left. Unemployment went through the roof. That's what caused the foreclosure. So there was a domino that tipped over the unemployment. So that's the chart we have to look at this cycle. Or is unemployment going to tip over? Is it going to tip over other charts? Okay? All right. 5 minutes, Joey. Okay. All right. So let's get to why that's probably not going to occur. These lines are in billions of dollars. So if you look to the left, in the cycle where interest rates were really cheap, we borrowed over $1 trillion for lots of quarters in a row. My guess wasn't just one loan per person. What if you had a chance to get 4.5% for the first time? Holy cow. And then next year it was 3.5. And the next year it was 2.5. You probably refied 3 times. As a matter of fact, when you did that, I probably think there was a conversation that said, we've always wanted an office or a pool, and we can have one now that doesn't even raise the payment. Let's do that. So it's interesting that maybe if you made those decisions, you're not going anywhere this time, that you're staying there. This is the amount of excess savings, it was all the way up, I think, to almost $2.5 trillion. Now it's about $700 billion. But what was normal? Look at 2020, quarter one, not much. So we still have more savings now. Huge amount of net worth. Adjustable loans, man, they were a very small participant for the last decade. Huge amounts of equity. Low LTV for the equity position. We were pretty disciplined in this cycle. We didn't cash out a lot of equity. We refied and refied, but we refied to lower interest rates and probably didn't pull out a lot of money. I think the lender learned a lesson. Look, maybe we shouldn't foreclose on everybody. That would be a bad idea because it dictated the value of every other piece of real estate in existence when they did that. So I think they've learned their lesson. And it's interesting, if you go on YouTube, can you find the story that says, oh, my foreclosures are exploding? Well, we have some data people today that talk about that. See, exploding is interesting. It depends if you have an agenda. Can I get an audience, please? So if you have 10 foreclosures that go to 30, is that insignificant or is that a 300% increase? It's insignificant because, again, it has to be a percentage of the sales to be damaging to the real estate market. What's interesting is this is the existing home for sale. It's way down. It's 1 million units. And at normal times, it's 2.5. Well, why is nothing for sale? So I'm a pretty practical person, so I think about that. Okay, if I had a 2.5% mortgage, what's the most valuable asset I have? It's the mortgage. I'm not going anywhere. What if I get transferred? Is that house going up for sale, or am I renting it for a grand cash flow, and I'll come back and live there again someday? See, that's more likely to happen. That's a very rational decision. What's coming up in a decision, let's say, and again, smarter people will be on the panel to think about what's next for interest rates, but just as a practical thing, let's say we get mortgage rates to 5.5. Does that induce the seller off his inactivity, because he has a 3.5% mortgage, does that induce him to sell, or does it induce the buyer to come off the sideline who's trying to say no to 8, and now he has a chance at 5.5? See, my guess would be you have a lot more buyers show up than sellers that have to sell. So it's a really weird market because there's no history of staying at the levels that we're at. Job openings are still there. Household growth is still there. This is what's interesting. So what has occurred is that normally new home sales represent 15% of all sales, and existing inventory is 85%. And now builders are at 33%. They're not selling more homes, by the way. They're selling as many homes as they used to, because the whole market is down by half, remember? But the builder is like got a shocked look on their face going, we're okay. Matter of fact, we're actually a more desired inventory because there's nothing else for sale in the existing world. So that's the thing that's occurring right now. So the lock-in effect is actually really in place. I think this chart says that something like 60 or 83% of mortgages are under 4%. We also started having, before the mortgages got really cheap, we already kept our homes for a lot longer than we used to. When I bought a home in '74, the average hold time was 4 years. Now it's 13, and now you gave people a 2.5%, 3% mortgage rate. I have a feeling they're not going anywhere, which means you have a lot less homes for sale. This is a guy that has a report that I really like. LA Housing Boards does all the counties in California. This is the missing listings. You just don't have the listings. People are not going to sell, okay? So this moodometer reading, let me just go forward to see. Okay, I'll go back there. I'm not going to scare you until the last one. I want you to look at this because this is the history going back all the way to 1980. How much time have you spent at 70% of your income being necessary to buy a house? It's euphoria. So I want you to think of the mindset that gets you there. Euphoria is 2021 when you have a house for sale and you know that within hours you'll have 12 overbids for all cash. And you're just like, I'm so good at this. That's what happens. That's how you get to 70%. Now we're at 70% and that emotion is not there. So if you're selling stuff now, what happens by noon? Nothing. You're going, see, I'm a seller. So I feel these emotions, you're going, okay, I'm not going to look. You don't want to get motivated, but there is now that balance where the stuff for sale doesn't have that immediate multiple buyer. It has a buyer. We just sold something yesterday at a price that's exactly what it was 2 years ago, but there wasn't 10 people wanted it at the same time. So it's stable, but I want you to realize it's never done what it's doing, ever. And if you went back to a normal percentage of what we're making and what it costs to buy a house, that's the next chart. Okay, the moodometer, instead of saying 70, many years, usually 9 years in a row in each of the other cycles, the last 2 cycles, would be a 40% mood, you're going to spend 40% of your income. Well, right now we're at about 860 median price. That would take that down with an 8% interest to 470. So you don't get too cocky, okay? So what's actually likely to occur is you are not going to have any price increases for a very long time. But you probably aren't going to have a price crash either. And it'll be really interesting to see if you have interest rates go back down. I can't wait to talk to some of the people that have bigger brains than I do talking about the interest rates because, again, you can get online and see all kinds of people going, oh yeah, it's going to be down to 4% in no time, and then other people are it's going to be 12. So I'd like to know where it's going to be, but the higher the rate, the less inventory is going to show up. And you have buyers. You know what percentage of buyers right now in Cape Coral there are? 60% of all transactions are cash. That's a big advantage. That's one of the reasons I'm in Florida. You know why? Because guess who migrates there? They migrate there from New York and New Jersey and Canada, where markets are twice as expensive So they sell something with $1 million loan on a $2 million house and buy a house that's free and clear. Here in Florida for $1 million, that's way nicer than what they sold. That's why I'm there. So anyway, all right, Joey, I know I took longer than 5. Sorry about that.
If he wasn't retired, I'd fire him right now. In the interest of time, we're going to find the full bios for all of our guests on isurviverealestate.com, but I'd like to bring up to the stage Sean O'Toole, founder and CEO of Property Radar, John Seabury, the CEO of the California Association of Realtors, and Doug Duncan, Chief Economy of Fannie Mae.
Well, thank you, guys. I'm excited to start. I want to ask this question because to me this is important. The ramifications of having an under 3% mortgage in place. I'd like to, just give that some thought and think about like a positive or even a negative that has caused in the real estate market. I'll start with one. I think it accelerated prices for sure. So talk about that. A huge equity position showed up very quickly. So even if you got in 2019, 2 years later, you had a 50% equity position. That's not normal. But it also builds in safety too. So they got a mortgage rate that's nothing, and they got an equity position that normally takes a year to show up, or 5 years, 10 years to show up. So that's, ramifications of a 3% mortgage. What other ramifications do you think happened? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll go. We talk a lot about the lock-in effect that people have with that.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that I don't see a lot of is that now 43% of homeowners in the United States have no mortgage at all.
That's right.
So those folks can move. They have the ability they're not locked in at all. So that's for those folks in the room thinking about who to try to transact with, that's a good group to think about. But, and on the equity piece overall, we now have 70%. If you take the whole homeownership stock, it's 70% equity.
Yeah.
Not 70% debt, 70%
right.
equity.
Right, huge safety valve for all kinds of stuff. You had brought something up for the first time that I thought, wow, it's like everybody that owned a home got a raise too.
Yes.
A big raise, because you went from whatever you had to a 2.5% or 3% mortgage. The net that created was like a car or two payment.
I think the percentage of folks free and clear and the increase in income, essentially, because you have this savings and expense, but this increase in your disposable income that we had during this great refinance boom is, I think, why so many people have underestimated the economy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Restaurants are so busy and
yeah,
all the rest.
Got extra dough.
Well, since you live in Florida, I was with the Florida Association of Realtors in 07, 08, 09, and we were ground zero, And so I think that's the difference that we see now when you're showing your charts and the potential for trustee sales. There's so much equity now that we didn't have in 06 and 07 and 08. And so there are buyers ready. The second someone can't pay their mortgage, we've got a need for that inventory. So that's, we're not going to see a repeat of 06, 07, 08 because of that.
Yeah, you're not going to have that. You're not going to have that trustee sale turn into an REO.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I live in Cape Coral, and I just came here to figure out who is driving prices up. Now I
know. I bucked the trend. I'm moving to California when everyone else is leaving.
Right. I would bet there's nobody in the room here that expected to see 3% mortgages in their lifetime.
Right. Yeah.
And that 3% mortgage was a function of policy, and the lock-in effect is a distortion of markets driven by policy. So, and there's not really a way to reverse that. we did a survey. Anytime, I'm a little bit like you in the sense that every time I read a headline that doesn't necessarily comport with what logic would suggest, I question it. And we have a survey function, so we were reading all the headlines about lock-in. So we actually surveyed 1,000 people in the Fannie Mae portfolio who had bought a home in this time period. And we asked them, are you locked in by interest rates, or is there some other factor at work? About a quarter of people said, yes, we're going to stay here because of the rate. But a bigger share said, well, the rates were important, but we were at a phase of life where we were thinking about making a change maybe a couple of years from now because of where our kids are relative to school. And COVID came along and we needed more space. So it was actually the combination of COVID, life change, and that incredible opportunity from an interest rate that shifted what we view as 4 years of business into 2 years. So what you're feeling today is the 2 years of payback from that business having moved forward in time. And we would agree with you that a lot of those people, they're the Gen Xers who never get any airtime. So we're trying to give the Gen Xers some airtime now. They're locked in, smooth move, good job. And I'm going to suggest a bunch of them, like you said, are going to become investors, because they will keep that house because the mortgage payment's $1,000 less than the rent in that market.
Right.
They'll use that to either subsidize the mortgage wherever they go, or else just take it as income.
You know, if you did end up becoming unemployed, there's a good chance you'd be able to keep your home because, like you say, the rent would be more than your payment.
Yep.
So it seems like you'd find a way, and the equity maybe you could access. Is there any appetite to let these loans move forward to another buyer at their current rate?
There's been a bunch of talk in the press about assumable loans. The challenge there is whether you have the cash to make the difference in the price work, because they're going to, whoever is the seller, you may be able to assume that mortgage, but there's going to be a cash calculation about what the value of the property is that you'll have to satisfy, and a lot of people may not have that cash.
You know, what's interesting, you know, years ago, you didn't need to assume a loan, right? You could do subject to, or it was a simple assumption. I think there was a $35 check you wrote, and you just put your name in place of the other name. Is there any appetite to do, and the reason I'm mentioning is because realtors right now are making, as a collective group, 50 cents on the dollar of what they made. So you almost have to create a transaction.
Well, that's why when we did our budgeting for 2024, we're estimating an 8% decrease in membership, 8.3% decrease in California realtors for next year. But we do have there's some light at the end of the tunnel where we're actually estimating home sales will increase by about 20% next year, which means the realtors who stay in the business will be making more money. So please know there is light at the end of the tunnel from our perspective. But on assumables, the National Association of Realtors just had a work group on assumable mortgages, looking at every government mortgage program and others. I don't have the final results yet. They're not out yet, but we can maybe circle back on that because it's definitely a huge interest to us. There are some government agencies that don't do assumables, like the Small Business Administration, which I think could help a lot of us. But most government programs have some kind of assumable function. We're just trying to get a better handle on giving Congress some direction on how they could maybe help us in that area.
Okay. So now we have an 8% mortgage rate, right? About?
I missed what you said.
I'm sorry, we have about an 8% mortgage rate?
Yeah, some people are at that.
Yeah, something like that. So I was thinking about the negatives of that. First of all, if you're a realtor, a lot less business. But there's also, let's say, I didn't get in. You know, I didn't get one of those 3 or 4% mortgage rates. I was not at the right stage in life. I'd never owned a property, and all of a sudden, I'm probably feeling I don't have a shot. That's, you know, that would occur to me. So I guess I'm trying to think about the mood of the person that's thinking, I may never have an opportunity to do this. You know, what's that doing to, it's almost like the haves and have-nots. The people that have the 2 and the 3 and 4% mortgage rates and the people that are renting, but the rent went up like 50% in 2 years. I mean, you know, we had rentals and go, holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, one of your charts, you know, you showed, or actually you said that when interest rates come down maybe to 5.5%, we'll see this movement. That's what we believe is going to happen. Those of us who've been around a long time also saw on your chart that the long run average for interest rates is closer to where we are today. It's just the public doesn't know that. It's not what they're feeling. They need to see some interest rate relief. And so I think they will start to move. But for those of us, so you did say, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with prices, but if you look at the last number of years and prices continued to go up and shocked us all, if I bought today at you know, if it's 7.5% next month or in a couple of months, but in my mind, I'm thinking the value is going to continue to increase. So isn't that a good thing? Because wouldn't I rather buy it today and gain that equity?
Why do you think that equity is going to happen?
Well, that's definitely, that's the uncharted territory. However, we're so underbuilt in the United States that there is so much demand for the property that's there. I think it's defying all, you know, it's just what, you know, we can't predict. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, but if we're millions and millions of units underbuilt, that's a position we weren't in 10 years ago. That's not a position we were in 20 years ago. That is the place where we are today, and there's so much demand for this, whether it's the investor, the first-time person who's paying more in rent, like you said, who wants to own a home. I just think the demand is going to the demand is huge.
Okay, let's go back. I'm not being argumentative. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
That would be a lot more fun for them if we argued about something. You know?
Well, what you just said, there were millions behind. So in 2009, when prices were 60% off, were we millions ahead?
I think we were, so I don't, we'll ask Cornelius that when he's up here because he'll probably know as the builder. But I think we were building, of course, I was in Florida, remember, at the time, and builders stopped building.
Well, in 08, yes, but they built like crazy in 05 and 06.
Yeah, they had built and built and built, but then they just stopped. So when you sell your inventory, you lay off all your people, you're not building, then we end up over this 20-year period where suddenly we just haven't built. And so we don't have the inventory to meet the demand. And so that's why, I mean, again, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't say that prices are going to continue to increase the way they have, but I don't see them going down because, again, there's so much demand. Whether it's the cash buyer that can buy, if they have the opportunity, if someone else doesn't want it, you know, I just don't see prices falling.
Let me pick up on that a little bit. If you look at just a pure demographic profile of the country, the millennial age group is about 3 to 4 years away from peak first-time home buying age.
Okay.
And then there's a little bit of a slide, and then the next generation, there's actually a peak at the beginning of the next group, which is about the same in terms of the number of people as the peak of the millennials. So I would say for a decade, demographics are pretty strong. And then that will start to slide if we don't reform immigration, because the domestic birth rate is not replacement. So eventually we'll start to see a tail off. But you mentioned in your charts, which by the way, I'm stealing all of them.
Half of them are Fannie Mae's anyway, I think.
Well, I think it was Mark Twain that said theft is the sincerest form of flattery. So. You mentioned the share of new homes of total home sales, which is abnormally high.
Way, yeah.
It's also the share of first-time buyers as a percentage of new home buyers is also at a very high level relative to history. So there's a lesson there about the distortions from normal patterns in housing. So the lock-in effect, plus the fact that the boomers are doing what they said they were going to do all along, which is age in place, and they're also pretty healthy. So that's, and they learned during the pandemic that if you have an iPad and a connection to your doctor's office, you can get home health care, which will keep them in their house longer. So now you have the lock-in Gen Xers, you have the boomers staying in place. Then the question is, where does the supply come from for those first-time buyers who typically buy existing homes and then put in sweat equity and move up? So there was a little lesson in how markets work about, 2 months ago was the first time, or maybe even 3 now, when mortgage rates passed 7%. Within a couple of days of that, the secondary market, the mortgage-backed securities market, sort of stopped. So then within a week, you started seeing lenders offering 2-1 interest rate buydowns and builders offering to do 2% buydowns permanent on your mortgage rate. So why did that happen? Because, first of all, mortgage-backed securities investors did not believe that a mortgage-backed security backed by 7% mortgages would still be there a year after the Fed finished their inflation fight and brought rates back down. So they weren't going to invest in that. So the builders recognized that the problem of a first-time buyer is not granite countertops and finished basements. It's a basic house they can afford from a payment size and down payment. So the buy-down of interest rates meant the builders recognized the problem of the first-time buyer who has become a bigger share of their business. That put the rates down to where a mortgage-backed security investor would purchase an MBS backed by those loans at 5%, but not at 7%.
See, what's interesting about what you just said, so it seems like a lot of the first-time buyers would like new homes, but when you're building them, that product has the smallest margin.
Yep.
So, you're not putting any fluff in there, doesn't have a pool, doesn't have any of that. So your margin's tight. So when you start buying down rates, that's not cheap.
Yep.
That could take your margin. So I guess if you're a builder, when I get Craig up here, I'm going to ask him, but when you look at your target audience, we're building spec houses, and we intentionally built to the cash buyers standard, if you will. What do they want? They want the pool, they want to look at water behind their house and all that. That's the house that just sold for $725 that never sold for more than $725 even 2 years ago. So that market is still healthy, and a cash buyer is more likely in that, So that's when the builder's making decisions that they go after the first-time buyer in an 8% mortgage rate and they want to buy it down. We looked at that. I think the buy down for a $700,000 house was approaching $50,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of margin.
On the temporary buy down, and this is an honest question for Doug.
Yeah, 2-1.
I know it's your job to do the questions, but on the temporary buy downs, like the 2-1 and that kind of thing, how's that different than a pay option ARM?
Well,
and the problem we got ourselves into with those in 06.
Yeah, it's a relevant question, no question.
Troublemaker.
Yeah, it depends on it depends on what's required to qualify for the loan. So any of the adjustables or things that have adjustable components now have to be underwritten to the interest rate to which they can reset.
Okay.
So the law was actually changed.
So that is happening on those, the 2-1 buy downs.
It's part of the reason you don't see as much of a pickup in adjustable rate loans as you might have thought, given the pace at which rates rose.
Yeah,
that's good to hear.
When you buy the rate down up front, though, that's a different a different thing.
Fine.
It's not even connected to the transaction actually, because you do that in advance. Right. So if you buy, let's say, I'm going to buy $2 million of mortgages from 8 to 6, you write a check for $150,000, and then you get to use that for the next transactions. But you can also pay costs if you want for that transaction. So you might pay a point or something that's allowable for the buyer, but you've already bought the right for the fixed. Now, you might be able to raise your price, right? So you could compensate and say, okay, we're not going to get 725 if we're not going to net 725 if we're paying 50 grand for, but maybe we get 750 and eat the 50 grand, you know, and now you want to be the only game in town, I guess. If you're a seller, you go, okay, how do I set myself apart and say, okay, whoa, look at that. That's why I would buy that one as opposed to this one. Right. So, okay. Joey, we got a couple of minutes? 1? 2? He's so hard on me, man. I just want to, okay. All right, transitory, I love that word. You know, when we were trying to see if we were going to have inflation, the smartest people in the world are going, yeah, transitory. And now it's certainly turned other than that. So what were they looking at that they thought was going to happen that didn't happen?
When the Fed first used the word transitory, in speaking to audiences, I said I reached for my Oxford English Dictionary, which was next to my computer, which I assume you have yours there as well. And when I looked up the first definition, it says not permanent.
Yeah.
Which life is transitory, right? So what they were looking at was the ships lined up outside of Long Beach Port. So they were looking at the bottlenecks that the virus had caused in the chain of the construction of goods,
right.
Goods and services. That certainly was, part of that certainly was transitory in that the businesses had to adjust to understand, first of all, what the implications of the virus were, and then adjust for the safety of their workforce. And that was a global issue. It wasn't just a U.S. Related issue. So you'll notice that there is no line of ships outside of Long Beach now. So only part of the issue was transitory. Part of it was we're restructuring supply chains, and that's expensive and time consuming. And so we're still seeing that effect. But we also had this massive transfer of money to household budgets.
Right.
Essentially, it was all deficit funded, which was now why we're paying as much interest on the federal debt as we're paying through the Defense Department. So that's still working its way through the system. If you think about what happened with consumers, they got a transfer of cash from the federal government directly into their deposit account. And they used a significant portion of that to pay down credit cards, big decline in debt, and they saved the rest. So that's two ways that they now have spending power. You liked your chart that showed they did not cash out in refi. They
right.
lowered payments, so
yep.
now they have more disposable income from that perspective. You mentioned we sent them home to work from home, so they got an immediate pay raise from the fact that they no longer had the commuting cost. So you start to add all that up, tremendous boost on the demand side while supply was stuck, and you got 9% inflation out of that. It's not all out of the system yet, but it's coming out, and we think that there's going to be a downturn starting probably in the first half of next year.
I've run out of seconds on this. We'll get to that on the next phase, but yeah, I'm really interested to see when you think a recession is going to occur, and then also the reaction of the interest rates. One of the things that's really interesting is the spread between the mortgage rate and the 10-year is a lot bigger than normal. Why is that right now?
Who's going to replace the Fed? The Fed's the single biggest mortgage-backed security holder in the world. They own 21% of all MBS. All the banks and depositories together own 29.
Okay.
But the Fed is no longer buying, and they're letting the portfolio run off. So one of the questions in the market is who replaces them? Because they were not a returns buyer, they were a policy buyer.
Right.
And they intended to remove the volatility. Now they're letting volatility back into the market, so the spread has widened out.
You think that'll correct?
Over time it will, once the market figures out who's going to be
Who's the new buyer?
the new buyer.
You think the Fed will step back in?
Not under Powell's administration. He never liked that from
Okay.
the beginning. So, and they have a stated policy position of eliminating the portfolio.
Eliminating all
Yes.
of that?
Of the MBS portfolio.
Right.
Going back purely to treasuries.
But you're saying that represents 23% of all existing
21%
mortgages?
of all MBS.
And they want to bring that to zero?
Correct.
Wow.
But they're not going to sell. They're just letting it amortize. So it will take a while.
Oh, yeah.
Because their average coupon's around 4%.
Okay. All right, I guess we'll take a
Yes.
break.
Let's
Okay.
take a dessert break for 20 minutes, and then we'll come back
Cool.
for 2 more panels.
That was
Thank you.
fun.
So please welcome to the stage Craig Evans. He's the CEO of Douglas Brook Homes, DBL Capital, and Trinity Building Homes and Design. And Cornelius Burke. He is the VP of Legislative Affairs for the California Building Industry Association. Thank you. Bruce, take it away.
Thank you. You have a quote that I wanted to ask you about. It says, "We are in crisis, so now we have to remove barriers." That's a really appropriate quote in California. What were the barriers?
Thank you, Bruce, for opening this Pandora's box. Good evening, everybody. Cornelius Burke, Vice President of Legislative Affairs for the California Building Industry Association. We represent California's home builders. Our members, we build master plan communities, townhomes, ADUs, custom homes. We build about 85% of the new construction of homes in California, and California is a very tough state to do business. It's a beautiful state. We have Disneyland, we have the beaches, we have the mountains, but it's a tough state. Well, our top challenges here at the state capitol was the insurance crisis. As many of you know, probably experienced yourself, a lot of insurance premium either went up exponentially or policyholders saw their policies get canceled. So the California Building Industry Association worked with the governor's office, the insurance commissioner, to try to address that issue. It's still ongoing, but that's been the top issue at the state capitol for housing. Number two, it's been with us for a while now, is the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. It is so hard to get the green light to build anything in California because of rules such as CEQA, where people use it to stop projects under the guise of environmental issues. And just lastly, a lot of regulations that get added every year and a lot of new bills that emerge in Sacramento. One bill that we were able to defeat at the state capitol this year and hold for now is AB 68. This bill would limit our ability to build in suburban areas. It would have pretty much mandated statewide that the only new housing we could have is in infill areas, in urban areas near transit. Thanks to the work of the California Building Industry Association and others, we were able to stop that bill from proceeding in the state legislature this year. We also stopped another bill, AB 1000, which sought to limit warehouse development, particularly in the Inland Empire. And we also stopped another bill, AB 1335, that would have prevented home builders from selling 2 or more homes in one purchase. So a lot of bad bills we were able to stop at the state capitol that would have hurt our business and hurt our ability to increase the production of new homes in California.
Well, thank you for thank you for standing up for something that's reasonable. Craig, you live in Florida. It's a little easier to build there.
Yeah, I didn't have to fight any of these bills. It's fantastic. You know, I can get my permits in 30 to, well, I should say that. Now we're at about 90 days for a permit, so it's not, 19 years like some of the things here in California. So.
Yeah, he's not joking about that. There was, a friend of mine that he called me up all excited. He had a tract of land approved, and it was in Menifee. And when he started, he was 72, and when he called, he was 91. I'm glad he was still around, you know?
That's right.
He's probably waiting just for that. It's like, all right. Craig, take me through the time frame. If you're going to create a tract of lots. So you literally have a big parcel of land, and what would be the time process to say, okay, I'm going to build these out to a tract of houses? Approximately, what's the time frame in Florida to do that?
So I guess there's two factors there. If we're developing new land, that process where we can start going with horizontals within 11 months or so. From completely raw land, we could start to go horizontal within about 11 months, and then within 90 days after that start to go vertical. But the interesting thing about Florida right now, is especially in Southwest Florida and some areas on the east coast of Florida, the scattered lot game in Florida is really what's a big deal. In the areas where we build on the southwest side, from south of Tampa down to Naples area, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of vacant lots. Cape Coral alone, at the beginning of this year, we still had 70,000 vacant lots, entitlements in and approved. You've got a city just east of us that has 104,000 square miles of vacant lots, entitlements in and approved. All I've got to do is to go pull a permit, and I can start building in 90 days. So the game changes in the state of Florida quite dramatically.
Cornelius, is California got a big shortage of houses because of their policies?
Absolutely. We are in a housing crisis because of these policies. The governor, when he ran for governor in 2018, his goal was 3.5 million homes by 2025. We're not there at all. The Department of Finance, they have 2.5 by 2030. We need to build as much housing as possible. And one of the challenges that we face in our state, we need a band of folks, everyone in this room, everyone up and down the state, to be cheerleaders for housing. The NIMBYism in this state is out of control. The policies that our elected officials push in Sacramento are very problematic to housing production. And we need folks to raise their hand and say, yes, in my backyard, we need more housing. I mean, just this week, the California Department of Housing and Community Development released a report on the city of San Francisco. Their land use approval process take hundreds of days to approve a project, hundreds of days to get a permit for a project. Then we look around and say, wow, why don't we have housing? It's because of our policies that make it so tough to build housing in our state.
So instead of building new houses, so I'm familiar with the charts, California usually goes on a cycle, ends up about 150,000 houses, but just came off of 120 before that, 100. So you never passed 50 or 60,000 homes for this whole run of boom.
Last year, we tracked building permits. Last year we had about 130.
What, 130 for what?
Multifamily and...
Multifamily. I'm talking about single family. Normally you have 150 single family. So they were absent like 100. It was because it just wasn't practical for a builder to go through the process? Is that basically it? You just go, eh.
Some of it's just the land use approval process, some of it just the market's dynamics, but yeah, a lot of it is the local land use approval process.
So ADUs has become the thing. So is that, apparently that's something California wants to occur.
Absolutely, ADUs have taken off, and it's because of just reducing the barriers. Now they're ministerial, they're buy right over the counter. There was legislation passed this year and signed into law to make them ADU condos. A lot of questions on implementation of that. There's more financing available for ADUs, and they've taken off. ADUs has been just a huge growth throughout the state because of some of those barriers that have been removed.
It's been my experience that density is not a good thing. I'll just lay that out. I've been a buyer for a long time. The best deals that I've ever gotten is when you have fourplexes tied together in an area. I bought them in Moreno Valley, San Bernardino, Riverside for nothing because of the density creates dangerous environments. So that's why I'm just trying to be concerned about something. When Aaron passed away, I actually drove around Riverside to visit each of the houses that he was at. You know what was in common? There were cars parked on the not the street, on the lawns of every house. So we had a 5-bedroom house at one point. There were 5 cars on the lawn. So they had 5 people. So, when you're adding ADUs, is there some consideration about, okay, we're adding maybe too many people in one place, as opposed to, your statement was really interesting. We're in a crisis, and now we have to move barriers. That's a good thing to think out in advance, right? So as you're getting housing demand, but you're placing it inside of an existing house. And now you're saying, I think there's even rules now passed that becomes possible to deed as an owner. Is that correct?
Yes, and also, interesting enough, SB 1069, which was signed into law in 2016, doesn't require parking requirements, so that's some of the challenges that you're talking about. Yes, we do see a lot of challenges with more infill development, parking, and just noise, a lot of challenges. But as we talked about with AB 68, we have a state legislator who doesn't want any suburban housing.
He doesn't want?
Any suburban housing at all.
Right.
So we do see this tug of war with policymakers and urban planners who believe that all the growth should be in infill areas near transit. And quite frankly, we say no, we need housing in suburban areas, we need housing in infill areas, we need obviously high-rise development, we need single-family homes, we need duplex, we need them all. That's what we preach at CBIA. So I think we'll see this tug of war continue between policymakers and urban planners and folks saying, hey, you know what, let's accommodate all the growth in urban areas near transit. Also, one of the things that we have to do in the home building industry, particularly when we build master plan communities, is deal with this new regulation called VMTs, vehicle mile travel. Historically, when we build any project, we have to do level of service. How do you reduce congestion if you're building a shopping center or a master plan community? How do you reduce congestion in the streets? Now under VMTs is how do you eliminate trips totally? This policy says people shouldn't be driving at all. Yes, at all. So these are the policies that we try to push back against and say we need balance. This isn't realistic to the market-based economy that we have today.
Interesting. I like that I'm in Florida right now,
We need to be more like Florida, absolutely.
Well, there's a chart that I paid attention to when you make decisions, and there's migration of money. So this is serious. So Florida has the most migration of billions of dollars by far. When you look at the top 10 list, Florida's number is more than number 2 through 9. On the negative side, California has got the most wealth leaving. And, that's the part of the problem with the policies, that you're just going, okay, there's nothing available other than an ADU. You guys have land still available and like amenities and all that. It's just hard to understand why they're saying, well, we can't build any tracks there, It's just sad.
Bruce, you were talking in the last segment a little bit about from a permit perspective. We look at the amount of permits that were pulled just in 2021. Everybody thinks that 2021 was this fantastic year of construction. The reality was the amount of permits that were pulled nationwide for 2021 matched what was pulled in the year 2000.
Okay.
So we reached about 1.1 million permits in 2000, about the same thing in 2021.
Nationally.
Yeah. We swelled up to about 1.8, 1.9 in the 05 and 06.
Right, but that was crazy.
We dropped down to about 25%
right.
in 07.
Right.
So, we're coming back up, and in the aspect of there's a shortage on housing, which you started talking about. I guess my question out of that is, and you and I were talking about this beforehand, how it's easy for me in Florida to say, I don't have those problems. I mean, we talked about that. I don't have that problem of how to build new housing, but yet we still have a shortage of housing because you and I've talked today, that's not coming, and what you talked about in the segment, that's not coming out of a resale. The people in Florida are not going to walk from a 2, 3, or 4% to buy anything in a 5, 6, 7, or 8.
Well, that's
in that building of filling that space out of people that are renting or those types of things. Once we can get to an affordability rate, how do we do that in California? Because California is basically saying, we don't want to be a part of anything to fill that niche of permits that's needed for the country that we're already behind.
Yeah,
So that's something that Cornelius and I have been, we spent 30 minutes talking about the project.
Well, that's why there's so many people leaving, right? It's just they can't find the home that they want. So it's just discouraging because, you know, I'd lived in California for a long time, but it's hard for somebody to start here, right? Because of the price and everything. But then you're saying, okay, can you imagine? I can't imagine the conversation with my wife. Okay, the only thing that's available is an ADU above somebody else's garage. Well, we get to own it. You know, that wouldn't go over too good. Craig, I wanted to ask you something on the building side. Do habits change of builders? So let's say you're building in 2020, you're probably as comfortable as can be speccing without a buyer in hand. Does that habit change to where are builders now waiting until they have maybe a contract more often before they build?
Over the last 2 years, that has definitely, you know, changed a lot, and builders, depending on their pace of being able to deliver a product, which all things being equal, that the last 2 years of that as a builder has been extremely difficult to deliver a product on time in a decent time frame. But you know, a lot of that over the last few years has taken place because, you know, if you gave a fixed contract starting in 2000 that you wrote in February of 2000 and you delivered that product in, you know, let's say August or September, you'd had a 35% price increase on your cost of goods. If you're in affordability housing, you don't have that margin, so you were selling that house and paying $20,000 to get to the closing table. So
you're talking about 2020?
In 2020.
2020, okay.
Correct. So by midway through 2020, you know, a lot of builders were having to say, hey, we're not going to continue to eat this.
Right.
Because, you know, for starting about 15, as buildings started to move back up, a lot of builders, not all, but a lot of builders were going to a fixed price if they didn't have cost escalators in them. And so in that process, you know, builders were saying, hey, wait a minute, we're about to be toasted here. So a lot of them had to get out of those, you know, get those off the balance sheet and then start going to cost escalators or just waiting until the very end. You know,
okay.
Cost escalators wasn't good because the lenders didn't like them, and so they didn't want to lend on it because they didn't know where, if the person was going to even build a, you know, how much work was a lender going to do to not be able to close that loan when they got to it, because if the cost of the house had gone up 30%, the person couldn't do it, then they just done work for nothing.
How have you implemented loan buy downs in the new housing sales?
So it's interesting in what Doug was talking about earlier. You know, a lot of the big nationals, you know, they've got a balance sheet a lot different than I do. So they can afford to go in and do a 2-3% buy down, you know, buy that down from 8.25 down to 5.5.
Up front.
Up front.
Which is not cheap.
It is not cheap. You know, for me at a $350,000 to $400,000 house, I can buy down 1.25 for about $6,800. I go to 2 points, it takes me to $25,000. So for you know, I'm going to do 250 houses this year. That's a big swing that says, okay, this house may not be profitable anymore,
right,
or as profitable, and still cover fixed costs on all the employees that we've got. So it's definitely a challenge in competing with some of the nationals because they've got the ability and they've got a balance sheet that they can back into and do things that a lot of regionals and smaller builders physically can't do. But a permanent, you know, point and a quarter buy down, that's a great tool that we've used and are using it, and it's making a difference because again, for most of what we do, our bread and butter is affordable workforce housing. A point and a quarter on our housing is $300 to $350 change in their payment.
Right.
That now says that mom and dad can still go buy milk and can take their kids out to see a movie on the weekends.
Okay. Joey, where are you? You gave me one finger. I don't know which one it was, but
it was this one. All right. At this time, we're going to bring the rest of the panelists up, but we have something special. Tom Wilson, could you please come up to the stage?
Is that on?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
So we can't, I think, say that we're happy that Bruce is going to retire from this, or this would be the last event. But we also didn't want to let it go by without acknowledging the humanity of this gentleman.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
So we have a couple of things, and it's for all of us. So this is from all of us. And to know the man is to love the man. And we were trying to think of things that would be specific to our, what attracted us to this. For me, I suggested it's the education and the celebration. This event represents both of those things, and that's a big part of your life. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Doug, did you read what it was?
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, so we all know this is a certificate of a acknowledgement of a donation made to the Nixon Library and the Nixon National Cancer Conference in honor of Bruce Norris and in memory of Aaron Norris. So from all of the sponsors and all of the...
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I had the pleasure of meeting Bruce in about 2005, and he put the data behind my hunch and feelings that we were in a bubble. And Bruce, I really love you, but I especially like that you saved me so much money. I follow your advice. When early on in getting to know Bruce, we were engaged in a conversation one time with a real estate professional who was arguing something really silly, like prices always come down when mortgage rates go up.
Yeah.
which we all know, Bruce has taught us otherwise. And when the conversation was over, I turned to Bruce and said, Bruce, you were so quiet. You didn't really argue your case, your perspective, which I know is quite different. And he said, Tom, I'm never interested in being right. I just want to get it right. Is that so, Bruce Norris?
Yeah.
So on behalf of the sponsors and all of us who have gotten great pleasure out of this world-class event that Aaron started and that you've embraced in all these years, thanks for all this wonderful fact-based education that you've given us.
Thank you.
I have a plaque here for you which shows a picture of the panel of I Survived in years.
Okay.
So this started in 2008. This is the 16th year for I Survived. And it says, presented to Bruce Norris and the Norris Group in memory of Aaron Norris, in gratitude for your years of inspiration and your real estate investment community and the survivors.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. We started in 2008, which is why we use the term I survived. Not very many people were doing very well. All right, goodness gracious. I don't want to leave early, so let's see what we got. All right. Okay, I think I'm going to circle back around to something that's, I think, important to all of us. And maybe that's first is talking about inflation. So let's talk about that, because there's, in my mind, I'm not an economist. So what are the elements of inflation, I guess? Let's cover that. And what seems to be headed in the right direction to have a recession? I guess maybe, Doug, can you touch on that? Because
well, the textbook definition of inflation is the rate of change in the general price level. So there's a little bit of a misperception today about the level of prices versus the change in the level of those prices. So that has slowed down significantly.
Right.
At its peak, it was at about 9%. Right now, it's around 4% on a year-over-year basis. The core inflation is actually increasing just slightly faster than headline inflation because food and energy have come down somewhat. So headline is a little less than core. Core includes housing, and that's one of the things that the Fed is watching. There was some expectation, which both panels have touched on, about the lack of a direct connection between interest rates and prices, because there was a sense that prices would fall, and they did for one quarter. The third quarter of 2022, prices nationally fell. The Fed kind of was queuing off that and expecting the continuation of the decline in rents, which is really the component that
Right.
is. But house price gets involved because of looking at what rent you would have to pay in order to occupy the house that you own. That's called owner's equivalent rent.
Right.
So when house prices start going up again, which our estimate is when the full year of 2023 is in, house prices nationally will have risen 6.7%, which
Wow.
was certainly not the forecasts
Wow.
a year ago.
Is there a lag in?
There is a lag.
Okay.
And it's because leases are signed basically 1 year. They're renewed like on an annual basis, so they get renewed over time to adjust for the rise in rents.
And how big of a factor is what people make? Because, you know, you're hearing like UPS, I don't even know that they went to strike, right? They just settled. And I think there was another union that was about to do the same thing. So
that goes back to that. Let me tell you about the Uber driver that drove Lana and I to the airport, and he was complaining about inflation. And I said, so explain that to me. And what he meant was that prices had gone up by 9% and had not come down, but his wages had not gone up similarly. That's really what he was talking about.
So, okay, but let's map that out. How would that react? One of the charts that I put together that surprised me because wages doubled in the 70s. And so I was lucky enough that this one report from Cal Poly Pomona broke down the cost of the same house for 10 years in a row. So it was labor and parts, same house for 10 years. So the plumber that was making $5 an hour was making $10 at the end of the decade. But what was also interesting is what could he buy percentage-wise of what he could afford in 1970? It was 78%. So his wages doubled and he lost 22% of his buying power. So I'm trying to get my arms around, everybody's getting a raise that's not buying more stuff. Is that still marked as inflationary or is that deflationary?
Let me answer it in a different way. I'll send you my favorite chart.
Good.
I call it the barbed wire chart. I grew up in a dairy farm, and putting up barbed wire is no picnic. It's real simple logic, and it's very predictive. If you chart on the vertical axis the median house price relative to median household income, so what you're saying is somebody with a certain level of income can roughly afford a certain price, but that's adjusted according to what interest rates are if they have to borrow money. So the higher interest rates are, the less price they can afford relative to their income. And so what you see is that's very predictable. In terms of econometrics, the regression equation on that is almost perfect. Until the bubble, when we eased underwriting criteria and lent people money, giving them 30 years to pay back when they didn't have an income. Didn't work that well. You can see it go way off the predictive line. Then we saw the bust. It went way below the predictive line. And then for 4 years, from 2015 to 2019, it was exactly back on that line.
Okay.
Then the pandemic hit, now it's way above.
Okay, now it's way above to the equivalent of 2006.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what brings it down is the question.
Yeah, that is a question.
Yeah.
Because in 2007 and 8, you had a crash that prices went down by 50%. But as we're seeing, we got nothing for sale.
Correct.
So that's going to be a pretty stable, ridiculous number. So if you look at that chart over 50 years, you've only visited that peak at crazy times. And crazy times are seemingly to continue because of the math, there's nothing for sale. So is that going to keep inflation higher than normal? I guess that's what, is that going to be normal?
It won't keep inflation higher than normal, but prices will stay up there. Remember,
Right.
inflation is the rate of change in the price level. So we're just talking about prices went way up and they're not coming back down. So they're likely to flatten at some point, although, well, ask Craig, if mortgage rates come down to 5.5, will you see more action?
I kept building fast enough.
Right. So we're going to get back into the same problem that we have demographics pushing harder than supply, and you'll probably see price appreciation. So that will work its way back into the inflation measure, which is one of the reasons Powell is saying higher for longer.
Okay. One of the things that happened when interest rates doubled from 74 to 80, and you got to that number you're talking about in 1980, it was pretty equivalent to 06, not quite as bad, and in 2022. That number was reached after interest rates had doubled. We reached that same percent or higher when interest rates went up in 5 months? We got there. So we really didn't even use up our interest rate hike, and we were already there. So in a way that was safer, because if you think about, there was very few people that got into the market at the completely absurd multiple times their income. They didn't have a chance to do it. You know, there was very few of the people, if they were cash buyers, they didn't do it, and if they were borrowing buyers, there were just so few people that got pegged at that number. So that's probably safer for the market as well. What about components now that we're having to look at? So thinking about inflation, the debt levels that we have. So we've got $35 trillion. How is that financed, and for how long is it fixed? So maybe at some point it was a deal. You know, are you allowed to borrow 30-year deal money, or is that that doesn't work in that world? And is that about to adjust to a very crazy number?
I'm sorry, you're talking about the federal debt?
Yeah, federal debt, yeah, just if that's going to go out of whack.
Well, that's the chart I show before drinks are served. One decision that you have to make about why interest rates have gone where they are, other than the Fed was tightening monetary policy, the last 6 weeks or so are, I think, a separate event. And they're either that fixed income investors who would buy treasuries have decided that growth is going to be sustainably stronger so that the Fed will continue to push on rates, or the size of the debt that has to be financed is so massive that they're going to require more yield in order to make that investment. You have to make that decision if you're going to forecast today. We're more on the latter side, because to me, I think if we're spending the same amount of money on paying interest on that debt as we are spending on the Defense Department, that's a misallocation of resources.
So what is our negative per year now? Is it going to go be $2 trillion of debt growth? Okay. I guess we're going to get to that 40 trillion cover pretty soon, unfortunately. What about war? You know, just the uncertainty. You watch TV. I'm just curious. How does that play into interest rates or inflation and debt, I guess? Anybody?
You're all looking down.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
We had this conversation. We had this conversation at lunch, and we said we were going to ask you. So.
It was a bad selection of microphone is what it was. Well, there's multiple effects. One of the effects is when defense spending picks up, it directly grows GDP. So one of the reasons GDP has picked up is we spent 118 billion so far on Ukraine. Now that we have Gaza also on the plate, and of course that raises the probabilities China will be thinking about Taiwan. So you have people who don't like the United States considering whether or not we could support three fronts on war. And there's different ways to execute on that. It can be significantly inflationary. So if you looked at World War II, there was an agreement between the Treasury Department and the Fed that the Treasury would monetize that debt. That's certainly one possibility that could happen in this instance as well. And that keeps it from being inflationary. So they just continue to expand the balance sheet.
And we're at 130%, 137% debt to GDP. We're the world's reserve currency. Japan's at almost 300. If they can get to 300 as the world's reserve currency, we should be able to get pretty far, assuming we don't have some major misstep. So everybody keeps thinking about this as like a next year event. I think it's you know, if we stay on this path, then we don't get a good, you know, fiscal policy at some point. If we don't start electing people with brains, we're going to be in trouble. But it's not tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
Ray Dalio, have you read what he's written as far as that type of thing? Okay. So that's, he looked at a 500-year chart of countries, which is crazy, right? I mean, I feel like I've got 50 years of real estate down, and he's looking at 500 years of world history.
Well, he wasn't there for the whole thing.
Are you sure?
But one of the things that he's certain of because of history is that whoever has the reserve currency loses it. And also, he was concerned that when you get into this stage of all of his stages, I think this is stage 5, that the chance of war becomes increasing. And I just saw like a quote from him. He thought there was a chance of a world war at 50%, which is crazy. But, you know, I don't like watching TV right now either. So I guess.
The reserve currency is an exorbitant privilege. It's
Yeah.
what makes people around the globe buy our debt, is that fact. And it is one of the 3 strategic objectives of China to replace the dollar with the yuan. And it's a rational strategic objective.
Doesn't that include trust, though?
It does. It's why the arrangement that the Chinese, the Russians, Brazil, I forget the other country, they've talked about trying to create a competitive currency against the dollar. What do you think about the stability of contracts in those countries? One of the things that the United States has is contract law and courts that enforce them. That's a place where private investment takes place.
So when you look out, and I'm sorry, I keep on directing, I'm not trying to, please, yeah, anybody opinion, what do you think, how long away are we from a recession? And when we get a recession, that usually has the Fed doing a much different policy. So I'm just curious, do you think that's 6 months away? And what would drive that? I hate the time, do you think that's within a year? Let's put it that way.
Well, there's 3 rules to forecasting. If you give a number, don't give a date. If you give a date, don't give a number. And if you get it right, don't look surprised. My forecast is public, and I have a mild recession beginning in the first half of next year.
Okay, so let's say that that's accurate. So you have a recession. What does that do, let's say, to Fed fund rate, and what would that probably do to mortgage rates? Just approximate.
I will assume that if the recession occurs, the Fed will achieve its 2% target. So rates will come down. But I would say when Powell says higher for longer, there's two ways to interpret that. One is that they're going to stay with the Fed funds target where it is today for a longer time period, or when a recession occurs, if it's not catastrophic, they will lower rates more slowly than they have lowered them in the past.
Okay. Okay, because usually they are pretty aggressive.
Right.
Okay, so this.
But, you know, a recession is a pretty big range of things,
Sure,
right? We've
sure.
had plenty of recessions that most people don't feel
Right.
at all. We do have the fastest GDP growth of any country in the world right now, which seems really surprising for, you know, everybody saying all this, you know, there's all this economic trouble.
Yeah, that's why I'm actually surprised that I can't say I'm happy to hear it, but of course, interest rate wise, I am. But didn't we just come up with a 4.8?
9.
Or 9, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and like, when was the last time we were growing faster than China? I mean, it's been a long
time.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you know, I think that, I don't know how big, you know, is there a depth to your recession or anything?
Yeah,
recession?
about 1/4% of GDP. It's mild.
So at
Unemployment doesn't
1/4%,
get to 5%.
I don't know that we feel that.
Yeah. Well, we're already feeling it in housing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Very fair. Like, we definitely have a recession in housing, right? If you're a mortgage,
Yeah, if you're a mortgage,
realtor, et
yeah.
cetera, like, it feels pretty bad, but
Sure.
you got to look at the bigger picture still.
Well, you know, that's what happened in, say, 2021, and you brought it forward, right? So everybody got a refi. If you're in the refi business, you got 3 from you.
Right.
Yeah, so, you know, you were doing crazy things and all the buying and selling of houses, but, okay. I'd always like to look at categories that didn't exist before, because we've got 3 that really can affect the market that we didn't have. So in 2006, when prices crashed 2 years later, it kind of created niches that didn't exist before that are kind of substantial. So Airbnb is one of them. So you got a lot of properties that are in that container, if you will. So if you have unemployment or if you have a recession, how solid is that group? You think that's anybody, but it seems like that's going to stay there. You've got the new build to rent model, and now that may not be building like crazy right now because of the rates, but those houses exist already and they're not on the market for sale. So whatever the building numbers were, like the 1.1 or 2 million, a lot of those never were up for sale. They just were, okay, let's hold those things. And if you're in the buy-sell business, all of a sudden you're competing against somebody that wants to hold 10,000 houses, right, as rentals. We didn't have either of these categories before. And now we've got all 3, and they all came about at the end of a boom cycle that turned into a bargain. So I guess I'm just wondering, do you see any big piles of inventory coming from either of those piles? Will it change habits of the market?
I mean, the build to rents, you know, an institutional play to say that that money's better deployed in housing because of the lack of supply and some of the things that we've talked about than in other markets. So I think that's pretty bullish for housing, and I don't see that trade reversing itself. That was a long-term trade, long-term plan. You know, we have some customers that have been in that space, and you know, it's a very long-term view. I don't see a pile of inventory coming from there. You know, you definitely see short-term rental folks that kind of got all in and got way over their skis, didn't know what they're doing, and I think some of those have come to market, but that's easily absorbed. Mm-hmm. So no, I don't. I mean, that's the big question, like, where does the downturn come from, right? So we had the builders was one time, right? We had the trustee sales. They've changed that policy. That's not going to happen again.
Right.
So where is that motivated seller that's going to show up and impact prices? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I don't see it.
Well, yeah.
Bruce, in that aspect of like the Airbnb and the short-term stuff, just today I saw 3 different large industry titans coming out and talking about the aspect of travel, and from the aspect of pre-COVID, that they all said that on their balance sheets and what they're seeing is they all said officially that per their business model, most of these were airlines, hotel, people, that travel is back. So again, when you start looking at a short-term Airbnb, I've got a friend that manages some Airbnbs, 1,200-1,300 units in Airbnb, and he says that in the last 4 months, he's seen his Airbnb stuff picking up dramatically, again, because that travel aspect is finally back to where people feel like they're traveling, which is kind of interesting when we're saying our buying power feels less right now, because of where things are at, but yet somehow people are still traveling.
In 2006, the new builds went soaring, right? It was crazy high, and a lot of them.
What year?
Say 2006. So after 2000 to 2006,
there were about
new builds,
1.9 million in the United States.
Right, and a lot of them were being bought by investors who said they were going to live in the house.
Yep.
Okay. So
They just
50
checked
and
the wrong box.
Pardon me?
They just checked the wrong box.
Yeah. At that point, were we overbuilt? Like we're talking about being underbuilt by a lot. Nationally, were we overbuilt at that time? Really? Okay, we were. Okay.
The millennials weren't in the picture until 2015.
Say that one more time.
The millennials were not in the picture until
Okay.
2015. That's
Okay.
when they moved into the demand curve.
Okay.
The other thing we saw that I think sometimes we were talking about this earlier in the demographics and stuff is you can have, households are fairly flexible, right? So parents move in with children, children move in with parents, and we saw a lot of that, saw 5-bedroom homes in Stockton with one family in each bedroom in the crisis during the downturn, right? That reduces a lot of demand. And, if one bedroom houses a family, you suddenly have a lot of supply.
Right.
So there is some flexibility there. Same thing in the pandemic where you had families that needed to separate for medical reasons and stuff just for the safety of the family because somebody who's maybe in a medical profession coming home didn't want to, get an elderly parent sick. So that number of households thing, it doesn't just follow demographics. It's not that simple.
Mm-hmm. Bruce, you and I've talked about this before. The thing that interests me in the aspect of saying the millennials didn't come back until 15, when the market dropped in 08 and it went from 1.9 million, single-family permits being pulled in 06 to 08, there was like 420,000.
Right.
By 15, when they started entering the market, when you look from a retail or a resale perspective, those people coming in from an affordability, they're looking for that 10-year-old product. There was no product to buy then because nothing had been built since 04.
Right.
So there was nothing to buy because that wasn't there, So it has created a lag over the last, since that 13, 14 time period to where people are moving in there and say, well, I don't want to buy new, let me buy something that's 5 years old. Well, there was no 5-year-old house. So it's created a lag over since that time period that's just really now starting to catch up on those permits.
Well, how hard is it to catch up? I mean, you got
in California.
Well, just national.
Now that you can build
California's
ADUs.
not going to catch up. Cornelius, we're not picking on you, buddy, but as a matter of fact, you should get paid a lot of money for your job. You run into brick walls all day long. But I'm serious. How hard is it to catch up? I mean, so your builder, so your national builder, so my gosh, we could build twice as many homes. Why wouldn't they do that? Is it the land, or the process, or what?
Well, me personally, I think there's an affordability aspect right now that is, I know for a fact in the market space that we build, we price out about 52% of our market space that just can't afford the house right now. Hence the rate, the conversation we had about rate buy downs, things like that. But the basis of where you start is a big deal. And that volatility of the land market has moved a lot.
The 52% number was, what was that pointing out? That it takes 52% of their income?
No. We priced out 52% of the marketplace that can't afford to buy our houses anymore.
Can they afford to rent?
That's the struggle right now as well. No,
Okay.
That it is a real struggle. I mean, when you've got a $2,500 a month payment, and that's now taking, even in Southwest Florida, that's taking 60 to 62% of your debt to income. That's not an affordable product.
No, that's how
the roots of the supply problem of today were planted in 2007 to 2009. We went from building 2.2 million units to 400,000 in 1 year, and we stayed there for 3.5 years.
Okay.
So everybody in that supply chain found a different job. So all the surveys of builders, everyone said the same thing because they're all looking for the same thing to try to grow.
Okay.
And we lost years of apprentices learning that trade.
Yep.
That generation,
that's actually a great point. I mean, trying to find trades right now, trying to find a truck driver that can actually drive a truck. And literally, we have people apply to our trucking side of things that don't know how to drive a manual transmission.
Okay.
And they've been to school and they're only being trained. It's amazing the low skill that we have in our workforce now.
Okay. The generation right now that's the core, I want to buy a house for the first time. What age did they start that, and how different is that from, let's say, my generation, like 30 years ago? The desire for buying a house was not as urgent, right?
Well, so in 2010, there were all these stories that the millennials had learned the lesson of their parents: if you buy a house, you'll go into foreclosure and lose all your wealth. So they want to live in 300 square foot apartments with amenities. That's one of those headlines that I didn't believe. There was some fundamental shift in human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So we surveyed them, and in June of 2010, in the first survey, 92% of millennials said they eventually want a home. But they understood what happened if you bought a house without an income. So the first thing they were looking for was a job. And that expansion was the most urban-centric post-World War II expansion. So if you're going to have a job, you're living in the inner city, and what they make there is 300 square foot apartments, not single-family detached houses. So they were simply reflecting the structure of economics in their environment, which is first I got to have a job, then I got to get my credit in shape, then I got to save some money. I'm probably going to get partnered up, or as my mother says, benefit from clergy. Old school, 20th century stuff. Sorry. And guess what? When all that stuff happened, they entered the demand curve, which was 2015. So we saw that coming in 2014. We put out a press release in November. I'll never forget, we got all the phone calls. We said, supply is now the problem. Everybody's like, you are crazy. We just went through 2 million foreclosures. What are you talking about? So we went through the exercise, and since then, everybody's been talking about supply.
So you feel that supply being short is going to be an ongoing thing, like you said, for 10 years?
The boomers are locked in. The Gen Xers are locked in. It's on the back of the builders.
You have a senior, so there's, let's say, a lot of seniors. There's a chart I've seen that how many houses get added to the mix when those people pass on.
So we've got a survey that's probably going to come out next week. So I'll give you a little preview. We've surveyed homeowners the age of 60 and older and asked them, how are you thinking about your house? They're thinking they're going to stay there forever. They have no interest in reverse mortgages. They don't want to borrow money against it. All this kind of, it will not surprise you, the results that you will see, but I would not expect, other than death, that you're going to get a flood of supply that comes in from the boomers. And by the way, they're going to double in size over the next 20-some years in terms of share population.
Yeah.
The older population.
We're kind of running out of time. I want to ask Sean a question, but I'll ask the question I want to ask everybody to apply to. Thanks. Before I ask Sean. So the last question for everybody to respond to is, what's the one thing that you'd like to see happen in the next year? And it can cover any topic. just answer that question. So I look, I watch YouTube once in a while, and I go in there, and there's, oh my gosh, foreclosures are exploding and stuff like that. You actually kind of count them, so.
Yeah.
Any change that's a damage, like enough to damage the outcome? Okay.
No, in fact, we're down even year over year.
Oh,
in,
wow.
Most states. Texas is the exception, up 13%. But yeah, no, it's, and we're down still from we're down from 2019, pre-pandemic still as well. And in pretty much every state again, except Texas. Texas is up a little, but not substantially.
Yeah, 13% is nothing because of the starting point is so. I don't know the Texas charts, but let's say California, it represented a certain percentage of sales.
Yeah.
Those are big numbers. They're 25% of 400,000 sales, 100,000 trustee sales. You're probably talking about 13% of what, 1,000 going up or something?
A few thousand.
Yeah, so still, it's not even, it's a very small. See, guys, when you hear that stuff, it's really important to put it in context. If you're selling foreclosure data, sometimes, you can see some exaggerated articles. It's like, because they get the eyeballs, but then you go, okay, well, that's historically insignificant. So it helps to be independently capable of deciphering that.
It's actually a real problem because we have so many people out there kind of pitching that foreclosure story.
Yeah.
And then folks come to our site, sign up,
and
then there's no foreclosures.
Right.
And they're like, your data's wrong. Like, no, it's not. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, that is funny. All right. Do you expect any glut of those, by the way?
No, I mean, just again, back to those equity numbers, 43% of homes owned free and clear, 70% equity in the overall market, and a completely different policy framework. And we didn't talk as much about policy, but like our inflation is a result of policy, right? Like, and lack of policy, and this is where we're pretty broken, So our only tool, like you just want to figure out what's going on, you got to think about what would the Fed do, because you don't have to worry about what will Congress do because they're not doing anything.
Okay. I'm concerned about the Fed in their. I think when you put out something that everybody looks at, like in 2007, they put out that GDP growth for 2008 would be 2% or something. And it was like -4, and you're just going, okay, that's a miss, right? And you're kind of going, what the heck? All right, enough of that. So yeah, let's start all the way at the end. You've been busy all night. Might as well go to the. What's the one thing you'd like to see in the next year?
Merle Haggard had a song called Rainbow Stew, and it's when the man goes to the White House door and does what he says he'll do, that's what we'll be drinking free bubble up and eating rainbow stew. So I would like to see an agreement between the parties conducting fiscal policy and those conducting monetary policy to rationalize our federal budget in such a way that investors expect there to be discipline and rates come down as a result of that, because the industry needs that.
The odds of that?
Can I get a glass of wine? Not great.
Okay. All right.
This won't happen in the next year. Is that on? Yeah. But because it's taken many, many years to get here, but I would like to see us change the minds of our elected officials at the local, state, and national level and start to understand the role real estate plays in our economy. Collectively, real estate is 17% of the GDP of our country, and we're not taking credit for that. Every single home sale has an economic ripple effect of an additional $247,000 in the state of California based on the median price of just over $800,000. Every single home sale creates 4 additional jobs. And if our elected officials and regulators are doing things that don't allow us to build more housing and sell more housing, they're killing the goose that laid the golden egg. So we all need to join together and change the narrative with our elected officials.
Thank you. Craig?
Bruce, you and I talk a lot. I've got kids and they mean the world to me. So from a perspective of thinking about what does this look like long term, I would like to see kind of what Sean said, elect some people with a brain. Regardless of where they're at from a social policy, from a fiscal policy, to actually be able to work together and make decisions that can start to recognize, rates and the whole process, that how that drives and what that does to our economy. Because, when everything that my company does is focused on workforce housing and the workforce that drives our country, it's hard to admit that I'm struggling to build a product that 52% of our population cannot afford because of policies that are made because of both sides of the aisle. And I'm not trying to make but both sides of the aisle want to sit and fight. So I would like to see us collectively elect people with a brain, regardless of our social policies, regardless of color, race, who we sleep with. Do something that sets our country on a policy so we're not fighting China back in the next decade, and that we can actually afford to live a life so that my kids can do that.
Okay.
Well, in 2024, I'm praying and I'm going to be very optimistic that our elected officials in Sacramento and, of course, in DC and locally, they advance policies that reduce the costs, complexities, and delays to approving and building new housing. Secondarily, in 2024, which is really critical for us at the California Building Industry Association, is passing a school bond. Yes, we need to modernize and build new schools, but the way we do it in California is a three-pronged formula: home builder fees, local district fees, and the state portion. If there is no state portion, home builder fees will have to increase or quadruple, which will price out a lot of folks from buying new homes. It will essentially be a moratorium on middle-class housing. So passing a school bond is critically important in 2024.
Interesting. I'm going to go a different direction. And what I want to see this next year is, all of you again with I survived ending and Bruce retiring. I look forward to this every year and getting to see everybody here and being on this panel. I've been trying to figure out it was 12 or 13 years. It wasn't all the years, but
it's been a lot.
I really appreciate you having me, and I've really enjoyed the event and all my time with you and with Aaron and with all of you. And I hope you all connect with me, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. Please do. Sean O'Toole, I'm pretty easy to find, and I hope to come to a lot more of your events and the rest, and see all of you more often. That's my goal for next year.
Thank you. I don't remember how often we've asked this question, but I think I've answered it the same way every time. And I'm still waiting for it to happen, to be honest with you. I want every elected official, Democrat or Republican, to do what's best for America, period. That's all I want. Well, we did it again. Thank you so much for coming. I hope it was an enjoyable and valuable night. It's very memorable. Thank you for everything that you meant to Aaron. This was his event. He's the one that dreamed this up. I didn't dream this up. Aaron said, how about we put on an event where we pay for all the expenses and we raise money for charity? Okay, that'll work. And it's turned out to be unbelievable. And I don't know, he actually might have thought this out, that if we were a charity, that people at your level would be able to come to it, because it was, And so it really changed who the Norris Group ended up being, right? And that was amazing. So Aaron, kudos, man. That was awesome. It really was. All right.
Thank you, Bruce.
Love you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. All right.